When I come around, got the whole thing wobbin', wobbin'.
On our next segment, we have the top 10 quarterbacks entering the 2018 college football season. And we'll start off from worst to first, 10 to 1. And I would like you to give me your first 10 through 6 guys you have.
You gotta start the.
Well, I'll start it off then for us here.
Yeah, go ahead. You go ahead and start it off for us, and we've even talked about this earlier.
Yeah.
Of our quarterbacks being almost identical.
Yeah. So we're gonna start it off first here. I'll start it off. My 10 through 6 guys. I have Khalil Tate, number 10, highly explosive guy there out of Arizona. Rich Rod has found somewhat of an explosive guy to run his one of his also spread offenses there, and he's been relatively successful. He's always been able to take over games, but he does suffer from in some of the early in the games, relatively in the first half. I believe he tends to struggle, and also tends to struggle against good competition, and sometimes tends to put up garbage time stats, as we saw from USC last year. Did give him a bit of a scare, but sometimes.
But the game was kind of out of hand already, where it was almost impossible to make a comeback. And Kevin Sumlin's definitely going to have his work cut out for him. He's hoping that he'll see a little bit of Johnny Manziel in him, because that's what he's hoping for.
Right.
But Tate might not be the passer that Johnny Manziel was at Texas A&M.
Yeah, because that was Khalil Tate's biggest weakness, is the fact that, if you take away the running game, like him running the ball, you got to have him beat you with the arm, and that's almost guaranteeing you a win. He will not beat you with his arm, neither does Arizona have the weapons and the receiving corps to beat certain teams, especially in the Pac-12. Number 9, my number 9 player headed in quarterback, Drew Lock. Drew Lock has all the arm talent in the world. He is an NFL prospect. He is, we have discussed that he may be QB number 1. And
next year at this time, we might be talking about him the number 1 pick.
Exactly. But the stats tend to show that the reason why I have him at number 9 is the fact, he does like to go for the deep ball a lot more than other quarterbacks. He doesn't run it. He's the most, in recent times, Missouri quarterback there's been. Missouri quarterbacks tend to run a lot of screens, a lot of shorter passing games. For him, he likes to go deep a lot of times. And what's your evaluation on Drew Lock?
Oh, yeah, he's definitely a deep ball thrower. He shows his arm. The offense has kind of adjusted for him more so than for the other quarterbacks. It also led to him also having a really bad percentage, because he completes under 60%. And in the SEC, there's freshman quarterbacks out there completing at least 60%. And this is an offense that you should be able to get 60%, but they've kind of adjusted it towards him more so. And he's not a high completion percentage guy, and that's fine with me in the long term. But Missouri overall outlook, they're playing in the SEC East. If they were playing in the Big 12, they would probably be a lot better. And Drew Lock is probably not going to be at any Heisman talks. He might not even be first team all SEC, because they won't win enough game. And in a conference where they value wins more so than individual
accolades,
stats, and individual stats, I think that it might hinder him from being this. Maybe at the end of the year, we might not be talking about him as the top 10 quarterback this season. But when it's NFL draft time, this guy would definitely be one of the guys we definitely talk about.
Right. And just to let everybody know, this top 10 ranking is not necessarily based on if they're going to perform well in the NFL. This is certainly based on college level talent. Next one, I have KJ Costello. KJ Costello has relatively been almost sometimes been a true gamer and a stud in fourth quarter of games and in crunch time of games. He has looked like he was tearing up USC last year at the end, towards the end of the game, and he is known to put his
the Pac-12 championship game.
Yeah.
He didn't play that first game, did he?
No,
no, he didn't. No, he didn't.
Yeah, but he is. I mean, he looks like he has ice cold blood in his veins, and he is. He's he's probably not going to be, at the end of the year, if we're going to do a review, maybe he'll touch the list, depending on how many wins that he helped Stanford win. But because Stanford is a very run-heavy offense, but don't count him out being a good quarterback. He is probably their best quarterback they've had since Andrew Luck, I believe.
Yeah, definitely the most talented since Andrew Luck. Performance-wise, he's on par with Kevin Hogan as far as performance, because Kevin Hogan, I believe, played all 4 years, did what he needed to do, won a Pac-12 championship, and those are things that you expect as a Stanford quarterback and stuff like that. But But as far as just talent, being able to do all those, KJ Costello is a little bit ahead of Kevin Hogan, and that's the only other quarterback you could really point out and say, okay, Stanford has really been at that level. And looking for this guy, a guy like that, and KJ Costello, he's better than Keller Christ. I'll say that much.
Yeah,
he's been better than the back two quarterbacks they've had.
Yeah, and the thing about Stanford, as both me and you have always talked about off air, is the fact that Stanford always recruits. If you look at the list, actually all the quarterbacks on their team are 5-star guys when they came out of high school. Ryan Burns, who's also on the team, was a 5-star guy. KJ Costello was the number 3 overall pocket passer in his respective recruiting class. So it's not like they'd never had talent. And you sit there, Kevin Hogan was probably the odd one out, because I believe in his recruiting class he was barely a 3 and a 4-star guy. Wasn't really highly touted, and beat out some talented kids out there in Stanford. But yeah, KJ Costello's there at number 8. Number 7 is a guy we already talked about, Shea Patterson. Shea Patterson's the 7th one for me. Extremely talented. The thing with Ole Miss is I think he didn't really put up that much statistical evidence to help back him up, but you do see the talent, no doubt.
He definitely. Ole Miss was in disarray. They weren't where they were supposed to be.
Yeah, and then they were, I think not bowl eligible.
And players transferring and going through coaches changes, and it affects the quarterbacks. All those type of things. The football is still, regardless how you feel, as far as fundamentals, it's still an emotional game.
Right.
And playing with all of those type of things, going with turmoil, it's kind of hard. And he gets himself at least a stable area going to Michigan. And that's why me and you both see him as a top 10 quarterback this year coming into the season.
Yeah, and especially he goes to an upgraded program at Michigan where it's surrounded by talent and a great defense behind him, where he's able to, he's going to be surrounded by weapons with, their wide receiver core, their young receiver core that they have gotten over there with Peoples-Jones and the other wide receiver Black out there. And so he has the weapons. Rashawn Gray headlines that defense there, and it's a good Michigan team to be going to, because last year we've also said, that they have lost so many starters, 9 on offense and 10 on defense, entering last season. Michigan did, but this year they have now new leadership and a good returning core for Shea Patterson to come over and take over the reins over there in Ann Arbor. Number 6, to round up the bottom 5, Trace McSorley. Trace McSorley at Penn State now is the head. It is now where the offense goes through is him. He's been a very good complement to Saquon Barkley for the last 2 seasons, but now he's going to be the headline of that Penn State offense and what makes it go. Now, this may be the biggest riser or biggest faller on this list, and when we do our review of the top 10 quarterbacks of 2018, when we talk about this once college football season's earlier, I think he can either take off and be as high as number 2 overall, or he may not, and we could look back and be like, wow, I don't know why we put him in the top 10.
I think that he stays in the top 10. I may disagree with you in that fact. I would rank him in the top 10, but I do think that he's actually one of the guys who's most likely to stay, because there's a guy at Penn State that's going to replace Saquon Barkley. He's not as good as Saquon Barkley. Saquon Barkley was the best college football player a year ago and probably like the last 2 years. You know, he's been the best college football player for the last 2 years. Not in stats or anything of that nature, just by looking at him and watching him and saying, hey, that guy might not have the most yards right now, but that guy's the best player on the team, you know?
Right.
More so to do with film and just watching him and just his effect on the game, that there was no one better than Saquon Barkley. But Miles Sanders, the running back, I think will just fit in almost in the same exact role, and he's going to take pressure off of Trace McSorley. So I don't necessarily think that it's going to be his show necessarily, but he'll be able to still manage, and having a 4-year career of steady consistency has to rank you in the top 10. I mean, we're not just, I know this is for 2018, right? 2018 season, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah, but but you have to start considering if a guy is consistent for 4 years and showing you really good years, that you have to put him in a place.
Right, and I do believe, like, he does have the talent. I 100% agree with you with Miles Sanders. Miles Sanders was the number 1 rated running back in his recruiting class. Let's be honest, the only reason why he didn't see the field much sooner is because Saquon Barkley was in front of him. You know, you can't do much with that. And I do, the thing is, to me, I do believe he now takes over as the offense, but Miles Sanders is going to be the one that, I think he'll be the one that goes from not really unknown. People do know about him there in Happy Valley, obviously in people across the country because he was a 5-star guy. But I do believe he will explode onto the scene, and it's going to be a very easy transition from Saquon to him. And now we go to the top 5. We'll do this, right here. Kyler Murray is number 5 for me. Kyler Murray, the reason why I have him number 5 is in the short time we did see him after Oklahoma blew out everybody in the Big 12 in certain games. When Kyler Murray came to play, there was little... I mean, you go from one of Oklahoma's best quarterbacks, and they've had a guy who was top 10 all-time in completion percentage, a Heisman winner, Baker Mayfield, and Kyler Murray. There is going to be a drop-off, but I don't think by that much either. The same as we were saying from Saquon Barkley to Miles Sanders is going to be relatively the same. That offense and those weapons around him at Oklahoma is still, I think this is the offense that's going to fit him much better than he had at Texas A&M. What do you...
I totally agree with you 100%. And he would be actually maybe it's not a dark horse because I've already heard his name being talked about as a possible Heisman Trophy candidate. But yeah, I could see Kyler Murray. But the thing that Kyler Murray is going to have to go up against is the Baker Mayfield mold. He can have similar stats to Baker Mayfield this year, but people are going to be like, oh, Baker Mayfield kind of did that. So it's like trying to win a Heisman 2 years back-to-back. You know what I always say about winning Heismans back-to-back? It's almost impossible.
Exactly.
Everybody has such high expectation. They'll look at his numbers and be like, oh, it's similar to Baker Mayfield. And he'll throw an interception in this game, and then they'll criticize him for costing them the game or blah, blah, blah. You know, those are the things that he's going up against. He's going to have that stigma of Baker Mayfield all year long, having a fight behind it, being his guy in the shadow. Because when he came in and started a year ago against West Virginia, that was like my first taste of Kyler Murray in meaningful snaps.
Right.
Against West Virginia when Baker Mayfield was suspended. He came in there, first thing, bam, 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 3 plays, and they were in the end zone,
Right.
And you really saw the talent that Kyler Murray can do in the offense, because he even adds a more of a dimension than Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield was an okay runner, but Murray, he can take it to the house.
Oh, yeah, Kyler Murray is an explosive runner. He's much faster. Yeah. He's a better ball carrier and ball handler. Mm-hmm. Now, obviously, Baker Mayfield could run. There was nothing. It's not like he couldn't. He's just much better. He's essentially a running back when he has the ball as well.
Mm-hmm.
And
where he beat Baker Mayfield in that department. That's the only thing that he probably can overshadow Baker Mayfield is that fact that he actually can take the ball and take the ball to the distance any given time.
Right.
As seen.
Yeah, so you maybe the only thing he may also have is maybe total touchdowns can probably be a little bit higher based on rushing stats as well.
Which is still hard to do. We're talking about Heisman.
Exactly, Heisman level.
Obviously, total touchdowns is going to be high.
Right. Now entering the top 4, Jake Fromm, the Drake Fromm true freshman that came into Georgia and helped take over the reins for Jacob Eason, who went down due to injury, and they just rode that hot hand all the way to the championship game. Almost won the championship game behind their true freshman quarterback stud, who was relatively also the number 1 overall quarterback in his respective recruiting class. But Jake Fromm comes in as number 4 for me. As a true sophomore, he has taken over that Georgia team. Over their very young and talented Georgia team, might I add you over there. And he's also looking behind his shoulder because he took over Jacob Eason's spot, who was almost the number 1 overall player in his class, got him the transfer, who's now at Washington. And behind him is also Justin Fields, a highly talented true freshman as well. But Jake Fromm, if he stays healthy, I also believe that he's going to be one of the top premier quarterbacks in this season.
Yeah, and the thing I really saw when I was watching Georgia a year ago and watching a lot of tape of the wide receivers and the offensive line, and I started seeing more trust in Georgia with him.
Yeah.
Where at the beginning of the year they were trying to hide him.
Right.
Towards the end of the year, they were featuring him. By the time they already got to the national championship at Alabama, they were not afraid to use him anymore. And I think the transition game was the Missouri game last year, because I kind of watched the games in order a year ago, reviewing it this summer, and I got a sense of how they started trusting him a little bit more from where he was at Notre Dame, where they were just like, okay, just don't screw up the game. We'll be fine. We're holding it from the bare of our teeth, not to make you sure that we put you in awkward positions where you have to win us the game. To, at the end of the year, where, hey, I could put the game on this guy's shoulder, and he's going to do that. Now, if they can continue to do that. Now, the problem with the Georgia thing is I really hated the fact that he's got a backup quarterback who's just as talented, if not more talented than him.
Right.
That's sitting right in his wings, that's probably not going to be redshirted.
Oh, yeah.
And any moment that he either has a Jalen Hurts moment where he throws a couple of interceptions and he's in there, he has to look over his shoulder and like, crap, that guy's going to beat me out. Or a situation where he gets hurt, he's going to be really kind of like worried,
Yeah, because they did the same thing to Jacob Eason.
Yeah, and so he has to really protect himself, and hopefully no injuries happen, and he doesn't have one of those 3 interception first halves, or right. 2 interception, or a half where he only scores 2 points or 3 points or whatever,
Exactly.
Those are going to be really concerns for him, and he's going to feel that pressure but the thing about it is I'm not as worried with a guy like him having to deal with that, because he had to deal with Eason a year ago, riding his shoulder too, because they would have pulled him any point.
Oh, yeah, the moment Jake Fromm messed up, Jacob Eason was going to be the starter.
Eason would have taken his job, and he was always worried about that too, because he knows that there was a 5-star guy there too, and he's already shown that, but it's still a problem he's going to have to deal with. And if you're Georgia, you almost have to grin your teeth at this, that you don't become Texas A&M or Texas Tech.
Yeah, where you have all these talented quarterbacks and then you start rushing them, and then all of a sudden one of them's going to transfer, and then all of a sudden both of them transfer, and then they're just not there.
Yeah, and then you end up with how Davis Webb and Baker Mayfield and all these other guys left the program, and you're kind of with Patrick Mahomes now and this and that. You don't want that. Texas Tech luckily had 3 of them that were able to be successful. Whereas in A&M they had
Kyle Allen and then Kyler Murray, and then they ended up both transferring. Yeah.
Yeah, and it just ended up being a disaster, and ultimately got Kevin Sumlin fired.
Right. Now, these next 3 guys that I got on this list, these are the reason why they're top 3, not only are they talented, they're also the guys that are stat stuffers. Guys who tend to put up ridiculous points and have the capability of putting up ridiculous points. Here. Number 3, I have Will Grier. Will Grier, to me, is, one, he has great weapons around him, and one, he plays in a conference that doesn't play no defense. But he has shown, since transferring from Florida, he has shown that he has talent, and he's living up to his Gatorade Player of the Year, the number one quarterback in his recruiting class. Granted, he wasn't a five-star guy. He was a bit highly touted due to the weak quarterback rankings in that class. But ever since coming to West Virginia, he has fit their mold very well. Now, he doesn't have any notable wins. They went 7-6 last year. That's not a very good resume for him. But him and David Stills have been connecting real good, and they're going to be a great dynamic duo out there in West Virginia.
Yeah, and a lot of those games it got into shootouts and they came in really close to beating a lot of really good teams. But ultimately, they always just found a way where it would be a drive here, a drive there that just made a difference. And Will Greer's has been a game. You know, he's going back to his days in Florida where he was leading an undefeated Florida team at a point, you know,
right,
before getting suspended and getting kicked out of school. You know, all of that type of stuff. And now he went into West Virginia. He waited his time, you know, sat behind a year, and now he's doing his thing. And I think if he comes back healthy, we could be definitely seeing the guy who pads up the most stats in the Big 12, you know?
Right, exactly. A guy who may be a stat leader in the Power 5 conferences, you know.
Just like a year ago at this time we were talking about Mason Rudolph and Baker Mayfield were going to, you know, throw jaw-dropping numbers too. I think Will Grier and Kyle Murray will be those guys.
Yeah, right. Next on my list, number 2, I have Jake Browning. Jake Browning had a down year this year relatively compared to his first 2 seasons. First season, you kind of give him a pass because he was a true freshman coming in with a new head coach at the program. And Jake Browning does have all the talent has the talent in the world to be a great college football quarterback. The problem is we've seen the drop-offs was the lack of talent, I think, that left toward the NFL. You know, with Ross going and being drafted, you know, he lost it. And then now he's lost Pettis as well. And he does have Myles Gaskin there still. He still has a relatively good running game. But I just think last year was relatively maybe somewhat of a fluke. I do expect him to fully bounce back and be a good quarterback. And I'm a big fan since Jake Browning, since he was in high school. This guy put up ridiculous stat. He is the all-time leader in high school in passing yards and touchdowns to interception ratio. And and I believe he has over 12,000 yards. Yes, 12,000 yards in 4 seasons. And I believe he's thrown over 112 touchdowns in his career, or maybe a bit over 150, I believe, in his high school career. And you saw when he took his team to the college football playoffs 2 years ago. Now, granted, there was a big difference in competition when you play against a team like Alabama and you're a team like Washington. And it was hard for him maybe to bounce back since then. And so what is your take on Jake Browning?
Oh, yeah, he's definitely one of the faces of college football entering there, and definitely the face of the Pac-12 as far as that. But godly numbers, he might not be able to throw him this year. A little bit more inexperienced than he's had in the past. He's going to have a freshman and a sophomore, Aaron Fuller. Expect something from out of him, number 12 from Washington. That's probably going to be his go-to guy. He's got Myles Gaskin coming back. His offensive line should be improved this year as well, too. The defense should be able as Washington, because their forte since Chris Peterson's been there has been defense, and they've been right in the defense through even the year that they went to the national championship. I mean, not the playoffs. Sorry, not the national championship. The playoffs. The year they made it to the playoffs, they were riding it through their defense, and I think that it's gonna be still the same thing with a bunch of leaders over down there and a lot of talent on that defensive side. Last year, he didn't have as many weapons. It was kind of Dante Pettis or bust, and they built their team around the running game. This year will be a little bit more balanced, but their running game should be even more explosive this year, especially getting back a top-tier offensive tackle like Trey Adams and and Caleb McRae and all these type of guys, it should help out this year. I do think Jake Browning is going to be a Heisman candidate. He should be a Heisman candidate going into the season.
Right, and if you look, and I'm looking at his raw statistics right now, 2017, did he get hurt? Because on here, no, I don't think so. Here, his completion percentage was actually the best in his career, 68.8%. His best touchdown to not best touchdown to interception ratio. He had a career low in interceptions with only 5, and career low in sacks with only 15. And so, but only 18 touchdowns though. Coming from a 43-9 season, he only threw 18-5, 18 touchdowns, 5 interceptions.
Yeah, that has a lot to do with John Ross leaving.
Yeah.
You lose a guy who runs a 4-2-2. What was it? 4-2-2?
4-2-1, I believe, or 4-2-2.
There was some crazy, ridiculous time back at the combine. I can't even remember anymore. But yeah, when he ran, when you lose a guy of John Ross's capability, your touchdowns numbers tend to struggle. And then they also had 2 really good running backs in the backfield where you could hand them off the ball and win games that way. You know, you don't have to throw 50 touchdowns in order to have a winning season at Washington.
Right, and if you want to know his raw game numbers that he had at his career numbers as in high school, this is ridiculous, folks. I'm telling you, it's like he had over 16,000 yards. He had over 229 touchdowns. And he had, in his final senior season, he threw 91 touchdowns and a California record of 5,700 yards passing.
That's crazy. 91 touchdowns. That means you were running up the score on people. Come on. There's no way you get 91 touchdowns if you weren't running up the score. So that kind of stat just is like mind-blowing. Like, it couldn't have been any close games.
Right.
Like, you were probably ahead by probably 50, and you're still throwing the football down the field.
Right, exactly. Like, those were his, and those are the all-time record numbers as well, too. So, and I believe he never threw less than 69% as well. So not only was he running up the score, he had great numbers all around. I mean, like, literally the best high school quarterback passing-wise.
229 career touchdowns in just 3 years is something.
No, in 4. It was in all 4 years. So the only quarterback, the record was held by Matty Mock, who had 219.
Jeez.
And so he beat that by 10, but 91 touchdowns in one season, though. That's insane.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
And then finally, we go to my number 1 quarterback entering this in, Jarrett Stidham. Jarrett Stidham, to me, was a highly touted guy, went to Baylor. The accusations came down about over 50 players were accused of sexual misconduct and rape allegations out there. Jarrett Stidham was granted a transfer, but though he did have to sit, he went and played at a junior college.
He didn't go and play football at all. He just worked out at a high school, at a local high school. For the time being, he didn't go through the junior college process. He just went to a school that didn't have a football program and just focused on academics alone, and was like pretty much like being a scout team quarterback for a local high school, and that kind of ordeal.
Right, but immensely talented guy. He is a dual threat quarterback, but he's learned as the years gone on. He has learned to be better with his arm. There at Auburn has won one of the better offensive minds out there with their head coach there, and this is probably their second most talented quarterback they have ever had since Cam Newton.
Yeah, this is probably their best quarterback since Cam has left. There hasn't been a better quarterback. I mean, Jawan Johnson, I one day predicted that this guy will win a championship and win a Heisman. I totally botched that.
Yeah.
This guy is a lot better, and I saw it from the spring game. I didn't even see that from Johnson even in the spring game. And a couple of years ago when he was first walking into the scene, I was like, oh, goodness, this guy really can play, And you got kind of that sense that he's going to be able to play in this level. And you even got that sense even going back to his days in Baylor where he got his first 3 starts before getting injured. And you could tell that this guy definitely has an arm talent, has a mobility to play in there. Definitely tough, what you look for, thick-skinned, and he can handle the ups and downs of college football. Now, his problem is going to be at Auburn is making those comebacks. That was ultimately Auburn's downfall. Is if anybody ever got ahead by them by a couple of scores, they would fold. And it's not just him; it's the whole team. But Jared Stidham has to be responsible for that as well too. And that's probably going to be the thing that he's going to have to overcome again this year.
Right, exactly.
Johnson, that's not easy either. He lost Kerryon Johnson, which was the focal point of the team.
Right. And Jared Stidham, you look at his career numbers at Baylor with the 3 games that he was there, he threw for 1,200 yards, 12 touchdowns, and only 2 interceptions. At Auburn, he did increase his yards. He went to 2,800, almost 3,000 yards, but his touchdowns didn't improve much, only by 5. Only did 17 touchdowns.
But the thing about it is, it's not that he didn't play better or anything of that nature. It's, Big 12, I'm sorry to say for you Big 12 fans out there, there's not a lot of defense going on. And I think that they kind of know that. Big 12 fans kind of know that there's not a bunch of defense going on out there. Their scores are kind of high, you know, they have players there here and there, and each team has 1 or 2 guys who could probably play in the next level, but like, it's not the SEC here. The SEC has the most defensive players that's going to play in the next level, the most talent around there, and it's Auburn, obviously. They're a run-first team, whereas opposed to Baylor, where we're going to shoot and fire, for our touchdowns. What were those 3 games that he faced against anyways?
I believe one of them was Kansas State. I know that for a fact. One of them was Kansas State.
Probably the best most consistent defensive team. Not the best one, the most consistent defensive team out of the Big 12.
Yeah.
The other ones?
I can't name you them off the bat, statistically.
I could quickly look it up real quick. In 2015, his games were
Kansas State, Oklahoma,
and
Oklahoma State.
Oklahoma State.
Yeah.
Yes.
And he played some against Kansas.
Mm-hmm.
And that was it. And the Kansas State game, 23 for 33, 419 yards, and 3 touchdowns. So
yeah, he never had none of those games. And at Auburn, you're not probably going to throw 3 touchdowns.
And
unless it's like you're like close to the end zone. Where in the Big 12, 3 touchdowns is not an uncommon thing. Scoring 5 touchdowns is not an uncommon thing. Or at Auburn, it is. I mean, the stats get kind of skewed, but I thought he played much better at Auburn than he has even at Baylor did. He did play better than at Baylor.
Right. And so that's it for our top 10 quarterbacks entering to the 2018 season. They go as listed: Khalil Tate at 10, Drew Lock, KJ Costello, Shea Patterson, Trace McSorley rounding up the bottom 5, 6 through 10. Top 5, Kyler Murray, Jake Fromm, Will Greer, Jake Browning, and then finally Jared Stidham is our best quarterback entering the season.